Hi everyone, and thanks for the warm welcome here. The presentation that I'm covering today talks about new video technologies and how they define the workspace of the future. The new video technology that I was planning to cover, not so new to everybody, is WebRTC, and we saw actually quite a lot of information about that yesterday. So I'm going to not repeat many of the good messages. I would be in complete agreement with many of the speakers that we saw yesterday. So I may cut things a little short or accelerate through that portion of the presentation. I've also managed to catch a cold or flu or something, so if I sound a little bit funny, apart from the Irish accent, apologies for that. So I thought it would be kind of fun to talk a bit about a 2020 vision, and the reason for that was I was reading the theme of the conference, which I found down in the program, which is the Today and Tomorrow of Visual Communications, building on 20 years of technology breakthroughs. So that gave me a little bit of motivation for this 2020 vision, looking 20 years into the past, a little bit at today's current workspace and how video is used, and then looking out into the future. Maybe not 20 years, because I don't know anybody that can predict that in the technology space, but at least a little bit out into the future. So the first thing that struck me about this was actually a personal thing, which was very soon I'm going to be 20 years in the industry. So it was a very, very interesting journey to look back at those 20 years and look at some of the technologies that I was involved with as they relate to video. Back in the early 90s, I was still in college, and I was learning about video technologies and learning about communications in computer architecture and networking modules. And shortly after that, I got an internship in a company called Northern Telecom, which went on to be Nortel and Nortel Networks, and that particular division that I worked in at that time is now a part of Avaya. And I think we have a presentation later from Richard from Avaya, who's going to talk about things that look to me to be very similar to what I'll cover here in terms of the message, at least, around federation and interoperability, which will be a key message, I think, that I want to bring out in this presentation. But it was very, very interesting to work on APIs, programmable interfaces for call control and video back at that point in time. It really opened my eyes to the power of multimodal communications, not just for voice or for video and messaging as it came later, but single ways of actually delivering that type of communication capability to the application layer. The first interesting fact that I was able to find out when I looked all the way back was that the first video conferencing system was introduced at the World's Fair in New York back in 1964, I think, so about 49 years ago. A little bit before my time, but it was interesting to see that that was a first breakthrough if we look at these technology milestones along the way. But then it wasn't until the early 90s where we saw maybe the next big set of breakthroughs. We saw the ITU and some other standards groups actually, create standards that provided a single way to get things done in the video space. I guess the other factors at that time were things like the Internet Protocol, advances in IP. Advances in video compression technologies, and the introduction of video to the desktop with CU/CME from Apple, both on the Mac and a year later on the PC. Back around that time, I had also come across a T120 with NetMeeting. I had been doing some work on a project that at the time it didn't really go anywhere, but was very interesting to work on. It was actually a few years later, maybe in the later 90s, of an ISDN card for a PC to do video conferencing using H320 and later H323 for call control. So these were very interesting to see these emerging standards, and suddenly between the various different vendors. I mean, at that point I worked at Nortel, but we were working on Microsoft technologies, and they were also emerging with some communication capability. You could really start to see how important it was to have interoperability in a portfolio of products. It was no longer about, you know, having a PBX and having a set of phones that went with that and just maintaining an island. It was really becoming all about interoperability, and that continues to be a key message. Another major advance that happened around that time, especially important for WebRTC, was the advent of web browsers. We saw Mosaic in 1993, followed by you know, a whole industry really in the web browser space. So if you think about it, exactly 20 years ago, there was a huge amount happening in the industry that influences the industry that we're in right now. So it's pretty good, and it's nice that it turns out we have a conference now 20 years later that, you know, with this type of theme, because it turns out that exactly at that point in time there was so much happening. So one thing I would encourage you to do, actually, it's not something we do often in this industry, is look back. Have a look back at some of the challenges that existed over the last 20 years. Because very often our industry is all very fast-paced, it's very future-focused. We don't tend to stop too much and look back. But many of the problems that we need to solve now and in the future are problems that have been solved already, just maybe with a different technology set. And I think it makes sense for us to look back at some of those solutions, how we tackle some of those problems, but apply today's techniques and today's technologies to them, because often we've been there before, we just get too busy and we're moving too fast to actually realize that. So an example of that might be that exactly 20 years ago, we have much of the functionality that we had today. We just had that in many devices. Many devices, as you would see here. This is a pretty good representation, I think, of the productivity tools that we would have had back in 93. So you have the PDA, you have a video recording device, you have mobile personal computing with the laptop, you have a mobile voice with the mobile phone, immediate image capture with a Polaroid, you have mobile music with the Sony Walkman, mobile and personal timekeeping with the watch, and notifications and limited text messaging with the pager. So, hands up, who would have used these, some of these, or all of these back in that time frame? Okay, all right. So, I need to ask as well, because I really focus a lot on social networking. I really need to ask, how many of you at that time would have used a Polaroid camera to take a picture of your dinner, develop it, and then walk around to all your friends' houses and show them what you've just eaten? No, you didn't do that before Facebook? You didn't? No? Okay. All right. So it's kind of funny that, I mean, so why do we do that now? I mean, why does everybody take a photo of their dinner and distribute it? And the reason is that there's a platform to do it. You have a digitized image, you have a social distribution platform, you can do it, so you do. And it's amazing while the function is the same, it's immediate image capture. The distribution mechanism, the platform, having a cloud-based platform and a social platform to do that, suddenly changes the way we behave, and it changes what we do. It's also interesting that, you know, 20 years later, all of this is available now on one device, on a smartphone or on a tablet. So we have all of that capability. And when you think about back to the timeline and back to the history, in '64, we had video conferencing. And then it took almost 30 years to get to the set of tools that we see on the top, which was amazing at the time, that we could make that amount of progress. But then in just 20 years, from that point to now, we've been able to, as an industry, condense that down both in terms of its footprint, its capability, and the technologies on the client and in the cloud to be able to make this happen. So what's pretty clear is the pace of innovation is increasing, but that's what we would expect in our industry. And it's not just about, I think, the pace of innovation, it's also about our rate of adoption. So it's kind of interesting on this chart, I know it's difficult to make it out, but in the far left, there's a pink dotted line for telephone. And if you look at the rate of consumption of the telephone, it starts over here at 1900, that's where the chart starts. And it slowly increases the consumption of the phone towards 100%, or high 90s at least. This chart goes to 2005. So well over a century, there's a steady increase in the consumption and adoption of the telephone. The same for electricity, cars, refrigerator, various other technologies that we use along the way. So that's really interesting to see that, and when we think about it, we all know that. We know how successful telephony, voice, and the telephone has been. You look at the steeper curves at the end, like the internet and cell phone, they're pretty steep curve, and again, we would expect that. But imagine how something like social media would look if it was on this chart. In 2004, 2005, you wouldn't have heard of Twitter. The social media industry, practically, that didn't exist. So social media and something like this would be almost like a vertical line. It's amazing how these technologies, when they come along, that we can consume them. Now, the fact that most of them exist apparently for free helps with that, but it's very, very interesting to see the rate of change here. So the interesting thing for us to think about is, what does that mean in terms of video? How would video, if it was a separate category on this, particularly video-based communications in a workplace environment, how would that look on here? And what are the sort of factors that would influence it? Well, one of the things I'd like to think about from a future-facing point of view is, what if the rate of adoption of video was challenged by an explosion in the number of devices that existed? And the number of connected devices, obviously would be a big factor, but what sort of technologies or what sort of changes, transitions would affect that type of phenomenon? And I think one technology category that we should look at in general is Internet of Things, or Internet of Everything. So let's take a look at some facts associated with the Internet of Things. So back in 1984, there was 1,000 devices connected to the internet. This is according to a Telefonica study that I'm quoting here. In '92, that was 1 million. In 2008, it was 1 billion. In 2010, it was 12.5 billion. And it's projected that by 2020, it will be 50 billion devices connected to the internet. So huge growth. And we've seen, the most amazing change in the way that we connect and communicate already, and I think the Internet of Things is going to change that dramatically. And just to illustrate the point, just a personal story. I was at a Gartner conference in London about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was very, very interesting. I arrived at the conference 7 a.m. breakfast. I was setting up my demo. I got everything in place. No network problems. About an hour or two later, as it was getting closer to demo time, I kept getting kicked off the network, and I'd rejoin, and 10 minutes later I'd be gone from the network again, and I couldn't figure this out. So I decided I better go complain. So I approached the IT guy, and then I see all the Cisco logos on the network kit and thought, okay, maybe I should turn this from a complaint into maybe a question. I shouldn't really complain about my own equipment. I realized from the discussion that it was a conference for 400 people, and what had affected it was, as more people showed up, the network became under pressure. And it was a conference for 400 people. They had provisioned the capability to connect 500 devices. So everybody showed up with multiple devices, phones, tablets, laptops, various different computing devices. So at the end of the day, I went back to I was really interested in this, so I went back and talked to the IT admin, and he said, actually it was more like just over a 3-to-1 ratio. It was 1,200 devices that connected to the network that day. And it was, if you think about that, that was really just down to personal computing devices, like I mentioned, the phone, the tablet, the laptop. But what if there were all sorts of other sensor-based inputs or other IP devices that were on the network that day? Even just by increasing our personal computing devices and communication devices, suddenly we start putting those networks under pressure. So I think we've barely scratched the surface in terms of the connected devices, and we would think that for all that is connected, possibly right now as much as 99% of the world is still unconnected. So we'd really like to, we really want to think about the challenges that that's going to bring for us in the future. And of course, it's not just about the number of connected devices. It's also about the data and the information that flows through that. This was a very interesting fact from the same Telefonica study. It amazed me, actually. But 4 exabytes of data was created last year. So I think that's 4 billion gigs. If they taught me anything at school, I think that's it. That's a lot of data. But the amazing fact is that it was more than the previous 5,000 years. Now, it's a bit of a sensational statistic, Because 5,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, we weren't exactly creating a lot. I mean, we can't have had much more than Commodore 64s or something like that back then. So, I mean, you know, it's a bit sensational. But even the fact that 2012 would create more than the last decade, that's a huge statistic. It's amazing that we're creating that amount of data. And of course, the more capable the sensors and the inputs become, the more rich that data is going to get, the more of it will be created. And then from this IDC survey, they expect that the digital universe will grow 50-fold between 2010 and 2020. And the numbers here are kind of amazing. They're expecting that by 2020 we'll have 40 zettabytes, zettabytes, but that's 40 trillion gigabytes. And it equates to something like 5,200 gigs per person. Now, I'm not sure that per person is the right way to measure this, because I imagine a lot of this is coming from sensor inputs and, for example, a factory or something like that. You can't really attribute that to, to a person. But it just shows that, for each person on the Earth, how much data will actually be created. So it's amazing. I mean, there's just unbelievable opportunities. And one of the things that I'd ask, everybody to think about is, what does that mean for you, for your customers, for your companies? What sort of opportunities will that open up? I mean, this is a lot of interest in Cisco right now in terms of what does it mean for the network, clearly. What does it mean for collaboration solutions, for data center? It's a real focus area. And if I bring this back to video, one of the things that I see is a huge opportunity for video. Think about things like video-enabled sensors. What would it mean for, say, for example, multi-stream? Multi-stream today, we think about generally in a, human context, like a video conference, personal video conferencing or immersive room systems. And, we're talking about maybe dozens of streams, maybe a little bit more than that. But what if it's hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands? What sort of challenges would that give us? What would we need to do from a standards perspective to be able to handle that? What would we need to do from an engineering perspective to be able to deal with that volume of video? So, that's a little bit about, say, the future in terms of the Internet of Things, and I'll come back to that near the end of the presentation here. But I wanted to jump now to the current workplace and how our workplace looks right now. So it's accepted, it's a little bit of an old statistic, but it's accepted that about 51% of internet traffic right now is attributed to video, and also that maybe as much as 90% will be video traffic in 3 to 4 years. And at Cisco we say that video is the new voice. This is something that, it gives you the quality of experience just like being there. And, for me, it's a huge part of the way I work. Personally, I can't do my working day without video. I'm lucky enough to live in a beautiful part of the world, in a town called Galway in the west coast of Ireland. But I work on a daily basis with colleagues on the west coast of the US. I work with customers all over the world. I can do that from my home or the office, which is only a few miles from my home. So it's a combination of video with enterprise social collaboration systems allows me to get that done. In the past, my collaboration challenge would have been, how do I share a particular piece of data? How can I interact with those people as if I was there? How can I really have impact or influence technology leaders while I'm maybe on audio only? They can't see me, they can't see what I want to talk about, I can't really get my message across. With video, I can do all of that. In fact, a challenge that I set myself was to try to reduce the collaboration challenge down to just time zone. And I think at this stage we're approaching that, or maybe we've achieved it. My biggest problem right now is time zone. And it's going to be a long time before I can fix that, or anybody can fix that. But it means that I can get on a video conference with Share and various other collaboration tools at 11 p.m., at 2 a.m., whatever it needs to be. And while personally that's difficult, it's less difficult than jumping on a plane and going halfway around the world. So it's a pretty good balance. And I'm happy with the fact that we can use video to reduce the collaboration problem to be one of time and time zone. Now, saying that, there's one area that really disappoints me, and it's a simple area, but it's something that I think is the biggest problem in our industry right now. I can do a CXO level video collaboration with Share and all of the other technologies from wherever I am. And yet I can't turn around and from that same device call my wife and kids and have a video call to the house unless we all agree to get on the same type of tablet or the same type of app running on a certain type of platform and we all stick to the same thing. That's a huge problem. That's not the way the telephone works. We wouldn't have gotten that rate of adoption that we looked at earlier on the telephone if a particular plastic type of phone couldn't call a different color plastic type of phone. That's, it's a big problem in our industry right now, and it's something that we absolutely have to solve. And the way to solve it is through standards. The way to solve it is to use a model similar to the telephony industry. I'm not saying the same. I'm not saying that we look 100 years in the past and try to do the same thing, but we should at least learn from history and learn from the successes so that we can apply the same thing. If we truly want video to be pervasive, we have to strive for interoperability. And one of the standards, that offers that promise is WebRTC. And we heard quite a lot about WebRTC yesterday. Jan did a very nice presentation and really, I think, set the scene for why it's important. And WebRTC, it's important to note as well, it's not just one thing. It consists of a set of standards, but it's also got, it's also down to choosing the right codecs. It's down to the browsers adopting uniformly the standards that are created, and then also the applications using in a uniform way the APIs that are exposed on top of the codecs and the various standards through the browsers. For example, if different browsers expose the API slightly differently, it means that the application will have to be written multiple times depending on the type of browser they want to use. Now suddenly we're back into the native client on a native OS problem that the web promises to solve. So we simply have to do this in a uniform way. I am confident in it, but it's, there's a lot of moving parts here and a lot of things we have to focus on. And I really liked Dan's metaphor yesterday of the diamond in the rough, and the fact that this gives us the opportunity to be a highly polished diamond. If we get all of these right. If we don't, we've got zirconia. But hopefully we'll get to the level where we actually have this in a ubiquitous way across the industry. So this diagram here kind of illustrates the calling home scenario. Say on the left, in case you can't tell, that's not me. On the left, we have a device, in this case a Cisco device, calling somebody that's running a software client, can be any type, can be in a browser or a native client running on a Dell laptop. The thing about this is you look at this and you think, we can do that. Right? And of course we can. Technically, this is not difficult. But from a business point of view, decisions have been made on certain different technologies across multiple different vendors so that not only is it difficult, it's practically impossible to achieve this today. But from a technology aspect, it's reasonably straightforward. And this is something that I think we really need to focus on. And that we've really got to avoid proprietary video islands or at least achieve interoperability between them. And why do we think that's important? It's not so that Keith can call his family. The industry is not going to change in that way, just for me. But it is important because of a number of influencing factors. The biggest of those is probably the consumer applications. The huge explosion in social networking and social media, and it drives an expectation of a certain type of behavior in software tooling, and that has made its way into business, into the enterprise environment. If you think about it, we all take part in virtual meetings, in employee-to-employee communications and collaboration. We're starting to see social collaboration make its way into the enterprise now. So the promise of something like WebRTC, where I can, from any browser interact using a rich set of collaboration technologies, ranging from instant messaging all the way through to high-end video, without downloading a specific proprietary application, without bringing a plug-in to a browser every time I click that I want to communicate with somebody because I'm using a different browser or they're using a different system and I get pushed some proprietary software. The promise of that, where I can just go to the browser and immediately communicate and collaborate, is very, very compelling for all sorts of reasons, ranging from security down to practical user experience. So WebRTC is a big deal, and it's it's something that we've really got to pay attention to. And just over a month ago, I attended a W3C workshop on web and social standards in San Francisco. And the good or maybe bad news is that they're also focusing on exactly the same thing. It's the same problem. From a social point of view, social networks are large proprietary islands. Think about the brands, think about Facebook or Google Plus or you name it. They're all individual systems. You can link between them, but you can't really interoperate between them. So the challenges faced by the web and the social industry are the same as faced by the video industry right now. It's all about federation, it's all about interoperability, and that's really where our focus and our standards focus needs to be. And really that, that work, it's not just in the W3C, it's happening in the IETF, it's happening in the ITU. I think we're really at a critical juncture. We're at a time where we've got an opportunity to get this very, very right and have a truly standards-based and interoperable video landscape, or we have a chance to get this very wrong and fail. But let's not contemplate that outcome. I think we have the capability to really make this successful. So overall, I think we are making good progress. Jan alluded to some of the standards yesterday, but there's a lot. There's a lot of standards that need to be considered. There's good convergence on the ones on the left side. I think the ones on the right are still being worked. There's not, as was mentioned in a few presentations yesterday, there's not an outcome yet in terms of the codecs and some other areas as well, but there is a lot of focus on it, and that's the good news there. I think there's a lot happening. I'm very hopeful, and I'm hopeful that we'll get to good conclusions on those so that we have an interoperable video industry. Okay, so that's really today's video landscape. I was out at the MIT Media Lab about 3 weeks ago, and I really got a glimpse of the future. It's a fantastic place to visit. Some of the stuff they've got going on there is as mind-blowing as you would imagine. It's just phenomenal stuff. One of the things they're doing is this living observatory. So what they've done is they've gone out to a marsh and they took a bunch of sensors and they scattered the sensors across the marsh, and the sensors involve the ability to take temperature, location, humidity, audio, and various other inputs, and then stream those back to the lab environment. And in the lab, they've recreated the marsh. So you can go into a room, it can be the same temperature, same humidity, same light, same sound as you're hearing in the marsh. I'll just go to their website. Let me see if this will work. Oops. Okay. See if we can get the audio from there right now. Okay, middle of the night, there's not much going on. But you can see that they're streaming this in. That's a little less than I hoped for. But it's worth looking at that during the daytime. But again, it made me think, what about video? What about video in this type of environment? If they could stream that video in, what their focus is on is not the marsh. Their focus is on sensor fusion. Fusing, they can, when you sit in this marsh, it's spatial audio, depending on where the sensors are relative to where the camera is at any point in time. So hugely interesting video challenges that exist. And I think that's something that we can learn a lot from. It's great to have that type of abstract research going on. We need to think about, where will this take us in the next 20 years? What does the Internet of Things mean? And what does it mean for our workspace environment? So to close out, I think that we're very focused on building a next generation workspace. I think that workspace, it's got to be a combination of the physical and the virtual. So the physical, where it's our video systems, our tablets, our mobile devices, smartphones, PCs. It's got to be built around the physical environment, but also the virtual, like social communities, dynamic communities, chat, and the various other collaboration technologies that are involved in today's workspace. Video has got to be pervasive. We've got to have the devices out there. We've got to have the level of interconnectivity so that we can get video from anywhere in a business-to-business environment or a business-to-consumer environment, that we're not restricted by firewalls apart from their use of security, but it's not a reason to not be able to connect between people, business-to-business or business-to-consumer. And of course, I've said it many times, it's probably the theme of this presentation is that everything must be interoperable. We will absolutely fail if we don't have interoperable systems. What I mean by fail is the video industry will fail. Video will exist, but we just won't be as successful as we could be unless we have interoperability. And finally, looking a bit more towards the future, I think this has to be a very adaptive environment. So I don't expect that we'll all build or recreate marshes and swamps in our environments. But think about, how does that abstract research? How does that impact the current workspace? Why could a meeting room not be set up for the type of meeting you're expecting to have? Take the context from the types of participants. Where are they right now? Are they on the road? Are they on a train? What's going on in that environment? And then configure the collaboration experience to replicate that environment, just like MIT Media Lab have replicated a swamp. I think this is not difficult to do. These are technologies that we can work with today, but we must make video adaptive to be able to achieve that. So overall, I'm really excited to be here at this event, and I've seen and learned quite a lot through yesterday. I think the interoperability challenge that we've got is huge, but it's something that we can address. I'm very excited to be part of the industry, to be part of Cisco and collaboration technology to help drive some of this change. And hopefully, on one hand, I hope to be retired. On another hand, if I'm around in 20 years, I'd love to come back and talk to you again about what video has changed, what changes have happened, and what the impact has been in the 20 years from now. Until then, thanks for listening.